Good afternoon, friends. Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Father William Michael from the Archdiocesan Committee for Child Protection, commonly known as CCP. This afternoon, I welcome all of you for our CCP Series 2 talk entitled Victim Care Center. Just to run through with you the sequence for today's talk. After my introduction, we will have the talk by Deborah, Miss Deborah, our speaker for the day, from 2:15 to 2:45 p.m. And from 2:45 to 3:15, we will have Q&A live, meaning you can unmute yourselves and ask the question directly to our speaker. And from 3:15 to 3:50 p.m., we will take questions from the chat box on Zoom, as well as the questions that you have typed in on YouTube for those who are watching us on YouTube. And from 3:50 to 4 p.m., Christopher Kushi, who's our moderator for this afternoon, will conclude with our closing remarks. Just a couple of house rules, as always. First, if I could ask all of you to mute your mic throughout the talk, you will be given an opportunity, a space to talk. Please unmute your mic if you wish to ask a question or to make a comment or to clarify a point on the topic of the day, which is Victim Care Center. And 3, questions can be asked live or typed in the chat box of Zoom or YouTube. Miss Deborah will answer all your questions both live and in the chat box of Zoom and YouTube before we end the session today. So ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our moderator for today, Mr. Christopher Kushi. Just a brief bio about him. He's presently an advocate and solicitor of the High Court of Malaya. He's also the legal advisor to the Minor Basilica of St. Anne, Bukit Mertajam. He is the civil law associate with the Tribunal Office in Penang. And currently, he's involved in promoting safeguarding and child protection awareness programs in the Archdiocese of Kuala Lumpur and the Diocese of Penang. And previously, Mr. Christopher Kushi was serving at the PDRM, the Royal Malaysian Police Force, the Malaysian Judiciary, the Attorney General Chambers, and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I present to you Mr. Christopher Kushi.
Thank you, Reverend Father William. Welcome, brothers and sisters in Christ, for today's second edition of the series of talks organized by the Archdiocese of Kuala Lumpur Child Protection Committee, where the talks are aimed at creating awareness and prevention in child maltreatment, child abuse, and child neglect. And today's talk is aptly entitled, "It's Time to Talk About It, Victim Care Center." Now, this talk is very important because all the while we've been listening to talks where the events happen until the stage of police report, then we stop. So today we are able to see, able to understand, able to decipher what happens to the victim once a report is lodged. And we have our speaker, Ms. Deborah Privi Herman, who will amply present to us the effects of that report on the child victim. Okay, Ms. Deborah is a psychology officer attached to IPK Negeri Sembilan at Seremban. I mean the state contingent police, state police contingent. No, she's a psychology officer in D11. D11 is a division called Women's Sexual Women and Child Investigation Unit. This unit D11 is under the CID, Criminal Investigation Department. Now, Ms. Deborah, she's a civilian in the PDRM. She's been what we call seconded by the JPA to assist in psychology counseling to victims. Now, I just read Ms. Deborah's resume. Ms. Deborah Priya Herman is very passionate and enthusiastic about helping people change their lives. And that's just what she has been doing on a daily basis for the past 10 years. She obtained her BA Psychology Honors from the University of North Texas in 2008 and is currently pursuing her Master's in Guidance and Counseling at University Putra, Malaysia. She has been working within the psychology and counseling field since 2009 and has ample of experience working with all groups of people, including children, adolescents, as well as adults, dealing with various types of psychological issues. She's currently working as a full-time psychology officer with the PDRM, where she provides psychological and counseling services to victims of crimes, especially victims of sexual abuse, child abuse, domestic violence. She has also now expanded to start her own private practice outside of office hours to be able to reach out to more people. Her training and specialization include, this is very interesting, so many terms I never heard before. Hypnotherapy, play therapy, projective drawing personality assessment, neuro-linguistic programming, reality therapy, and many more. Before I invite Ms. Deborah, as Father William has mentioned, the talk will be from 2:15 to 2:45. Then we'll have a discussion, question and answer session based on the chat and live Zoom. 2:45 to 3:15 to 3:45 will be from the YouTube question and answer discussion, and I'll wrap up 3:45 to 4. So herewith I welcome Ms. Deborah to start her presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chris, and a very good evening to everybody. Everybody can hear me, right? Thumbs up. All right. Okay. So I guess everybody knows a little bit about my background. So let me share my screen. Okay. So why is today's topic called Victim Care Center? Basically, this is the name of the unit that I am currently working in. So Victim Care Center is actually sort of like a smaller unit within the D11 division. So like as Mr. Chris just now explained, D11, like under the Criminal Investigation Department, we have so many divisions from D1 to D2 to D14. So each division deals with different kinds of crimes. Some focus on gangsterism, some focus on, drugs, things, different crimes. So D11, we focus on cases involving children, women, and sexual cases. So Victim Care Center is actually under D11. So when the victims go and make a police report, they will go to the balai or whichever inquiry balai that's nearest to their home. They'll make a report. So prior to the existence of the VCC, the Victim Care Center, when the victim makes a report, then usually there's no follow-up care for the victim. So they feel a little bit, how to say, hanging, like a bit, they're already traumatized, by the crime. For example, a woman who has been raped, she goes to the balai already going through the whole trauma of the rape, then going to the balai and sharing her story with a stranger, a police officer with a stranger. And then after that, the police will, of course, during the investigation, they have to dig further to find out more about the event and things like that. So prior to this, there was no follow-up care in terms of psychological care for the victim. So that is when our founder, I will talk to you about her later, she felt there was a need to have some sort of after like victim care center or victim care services for the victim. And that's how she founded the whole VCC lah. And in Malay, They call it Pusat Sokongan Mangsa. So that's a little bit about why today's topic is VCC, Victim Care Center. Okay, so so as you can see, this is what I just told you. The Malay name for Victim Care Center is Pusat Sokongan Mangsa. So sometimes if you come across either term, it means the same thing, Victim Care Center or Pusat Sokongan Mangsa. And we who are placed within this VCC, like for myself, we are called Victim Care Officers, VCO. And in Malay is Pegawai Sokongan Mangsa. Okay. All right, so this is actually the founder. Her name is she retired now, but she was ACP Ong Chin Lan, and she had this how to say passion towards because she was in the D11 unit, and her experience in the PDRM is vast. She started from the lower rank, and then she over the years she got promoted, and she retired as a ACP. So she went to further her studies in the UK, and she was very much attached to the police department there, and she learned their system where they actually have follow-up care for the victims after the report has been done, the investigation is being carried out, court case going on. So she learned that actually they don't just stop there, they actually provide psychological care for the victims. And that's how she came back to Malaysia, and it was her initiative to bring this up to the government, and she wrote a proposal, she did her research, and she finally got it done, where she introduced the VCC and also CIC, which I'll talk to you about later. It's called Child Interview Center. So she introduced these two into the D11 unit and recruited civilian staff to help within the PDRM. So while the police officers do their investigation, we, the civilian staff, assist in the psychological part of the victim. So these are some of the cases that we in D11 we deal with. So as I mentioned earlier, we deal with rape, we deal with child abuse, domestic violence. A lot of cases that we deal with now are involving child sexual abuse cases. And the reason that is so is because of the social media. So a lot of times now, for the past few years, one of my job in Negeri Sembilan is we actually go to schools or kindergartens, and we talk about social media, about pedophiles, about safe touch, unsafe touch, and things like that to prevent these kind of cases happening. Because a lot of times when the victim comes to us, and sometimes they may be like recently I had a girl who is almost 13 years old, 12 years plus. You would think that, okay, she's quite big and she should be able to know what's going on. But she has been abused by her stepfather for 3 years. And when we asked her, why didn't she come forward earlier and all that, it was because of fear, because the stepdad used to be very aggressive. And at the same time, uh, she's confused between love, like a fatherly love, and this kind of love, because that's very common among child sexual abuse cases, where they mix the perpetrator mixes love with this kind of sexual abuse. And if you all are familiar, 2 years ago, these cases was quite highlighted in the social media. One of it happened in Negeri Sembilan, so I actually met the victim. The first one, which we can see, the suspect was actually from Temyang, and he was caught and put in jail and all that. But in the end, he actually passed away in jail itself due to health reasons. So that girl in the first newspaper article, she was only 12 years old, but she was asked in the video that was being viral, she was being asked to perform oral sex on this man who is like late 40s or 50s, around that, who has a wife and has kids. And he made use of this little girl because she comes from a poor family, and she, for her, like, he used to tell her like, oh, you want to rebond your hair, right? Okay, so you must do this for me. So for her, those kind of little gifts, rewards was big. So she was groomed to perform this kind of sexual acts to this guy. But fortunately, this video went viral and it went to the right hands and people made a report and finally he got caught and arrested. So these are the kind of cases that we deal with nowadays. Okay, so to further elaborate more on what is the Victim Care Center, it was formed in 2003 under the Sexual and Child Investigation Division, and it was formed mainly to help victims of crime, as I mentioned earlier. And we don't just focus on the victims. For example, if a child is sexually abused, we also give psychological care to the family members, the parents, the siblings maybe, because in some way or another, they are involved. If a teenager runs away from home with her boyfriend and has consensual sex with her boyfriend, but because she's below 16 years old, it's considered rape in Malaysia. But so when we meet the victim, we also meet the family to find out what went wrong where, like, you know, how we can improve the family relationships. Why did the child in the first place run away from the home? So things like that, it's connected, you know. So we don't just focus on the victim, but also those who are within the victim's life. Of course, if the family agrees to come for counseling, yeah, sometimes they feel that, oh, too busy or no time, blah blah blah, then we cannot force them, because this is all based on voluntary basis. We don't like send an order saying that you have to come for counseling at this day, this time. No, this is purely on voluntary basis. It's just a service that we offer to the public, and it's up to them whether they want to make use of it. So we provide support for the traumatic victims. Of course, some victims who come may not be traumatic in the sense that they come in, you know, like having dreams or nightmares. Some of them may just have very mild symptoms, but we still meet them, we still assess them, and we still provide them the resources needed. Like we tell them that, okay, if you need shelter, for example, domestic violence victims, if you need shelter, then we refer them to other NGOs or JKM, welfare department, things like that. So we don't just focus on traumatic victims only. We provide to any victim, whether they are really showing psychological trauma or not. And we also assist the investigation officer during their investigation process. So every case that is reported, there will be an investigation officer. In short, they call them IO. There will be an IO in charge of that case. So that IO has to get the child's statement, the victim's statement, even the perpetrator's statement, you know, so they have to do the investigation. So sometimes the victim may be too, like if it's a small child, they may be too shy or too upset to actually talk about what happened to them. So that's when we come in to assist the IO in the whole process. So like earlier, I mentioned that we also have the center called the Child Interview Center, which I will be explaining further later. So in this Child Interview Center, we also provide this therapeutic and counseling kind of care to get the child comfortable enough to share what happened to them. And of course, we have ways and tools to use with them so that they feel more comfortable. We don't even do it in the balai. We do it in a different place where it's like a house, so they feel more like easygoing. The police don't wear uniform, things like that. Okay, and we also help the victim to get follow-up care. Like so sometimes if the victim comes and they are having severe psychological symptoms like unable to eat, unable to sleep, suddenly starting to having a bedwetting kind of habits started to form. So things like that, it shows that they are having severe psychological symptoms. Then we do refer them to like a psychiatrist in the government hospitals or other agencies as needed. So we don't just focus only on PDRM and we don't work with together with others. We do work with other. It's an interagency thing. So we work together. So this VCC concept is basically with the aim of being a very victim-friendly kind of place. So even our office is very comfortable looking, you know, the lighting is more dim. It's like very, you feel relaxed when you come to this place. Like it's, you know, when you go see counselors, when you go into the counseling room, you feel a bit more at ease, more comfortable to speak to the person. So that is our aim actually, to provide that kind of an environment. So when they come to see us, they, in a way, they feel comfortable enough to talk about what they are going through. And we want to help them overcome whatever they are going through. So so basically, as you can see the points there, we always ensure the victim's best interest. So in the sense that if just say the victim is unable to come to us in our office, we go to them. So like we actually can use, I'll just have to inform my boss, and we use the police cars and go to where the victim is. Because in the whole of Negeri Sembilan, I am the only psychology officer, and we have an assistant. I have an assistant, but basically it's just the two of us covering the whole of Negeri Sembilan. That means even if talking about cases in Port Dickson, cases in Kuala Pilah, like even if it's 1 hour away, we usually have to cover those cases if the victim wants to come for counseling. So we always ask the victim, are you able to come to IPK or to our office for counseling? If they say that no, I don't have transport, or no, I can't drive, or no, I don't have money to pay for taxi, so we go to them. We go to the nearest balai, or we go to their house. So we also, of course, ensure confidentiality during the investigation. So whenever I meet my clients, the victims, I always tell them we will sign a consent form, and I tell them that whatever they share with me in the room is confidential and only will be used in the investigation to help them in their case. We don't go around talking about it outside or things like that. And even sometimes with children cases, right? Uh, there are many cases the child, how to say, are afraid of the parents, so they actually kind of make up a different version of the story. And of course, when the police interview the kids, they know that there's something fishy behind the whole story. So when the police tries to, get the child to tell the truth, we always give them the assurance that, you know what, whatever you talk to us in this room is between you and us. If you don't want us to tell your parents, we will not, because as long as that information is used for the investigation to help the child, that's all is important. Whether the child decides to tell the parent later is up to the child, between child and parent lah. Okay, so that's the respect we give towards the victims. Okay, so then we also, there's no such thing as discrimination. We meet anyone and everyone. We keep them safe from further abuse, and of course we maintain the professionalism. So again, as I mentioned, usually the victims are mostly focusing on these cases lah: domestic violence, abuse, rape, incest, molestation. Sometimes other departments also use our services. So like if there's kidnap cases, we had a few years ago one girl who was kidnapped, and then she was just left at the side of the road. All her body was scraped, because she was dragged on the road, things like that. So even though she doesn't fall under the category of the D11 cases, but we still go and give her the psychological help, because obviously she was very traumatized. Then we also give protection to foreign workers. We sometimes abuse mates, students, we also give them psychological help. Sometimes the investigation even requires us to go to the, what do you call it, to their uh, bosses or higher ranking officers. We will go and do it, whatever is necessary. Criminal cases, victims. Okay, so basically, we also, during the process, like I told you, when there's family members involved, we do provide counseling and therapy to the family members. And when we talk about the perpetrators, right, my department, we do not provide counseling to the perpetrators, because that is a different role done by the penjara. Penjara themselves have a psychology officer who focus on the suspects and perpetrators of these kind of crimes. However, we focus on the perpetrators who are underage. That means they're 18 and below. If they're 18 and below and they're considered kanak-kanak, according to the definition of the Malaysian Act, if anyone is below the age of 18, they are still considered kanak-kanak. Then we provide counseling to those perpetrators as well, the suspects. Okay. So who handles the VCC? So as I mentioned, every state in the whole of Malaysia, every state there is one VCC. and it's handled by one VCO, which is so VCC is the Victim Care Center, VCO is the Victim Care Officer. So there will be one VCO and an assistant VCO. That means there'll be one who's the main psychology officer and one is the assistant psychology officer. So the assistant psychology officer usually helps with the administrative parts, but they're also trained in psychology. Just that the difference is between the assistant psychology officer is a diploma holder, while the psychology officer is a degree or master's holder. So that's the difference. So we have our different job scope as well, but they assist us very much in our cases and the administration and all that. And of course, we report to a police officer. So my boss is an ASP. If like in other states, if the IPK is bigger, like in Bukit Aman and all that, they report to higher ranking officers. So we do have a police officer in charge, and we have to report to them lah when whatever we do with the victims and things like that. And yes, we work together with other NGOs, hospitals. We do monthly meetings with the hospital together with other NGOs to discuss certain cases involving child abuse, what's the status of the child, what has been done for the child, things like that. They call it the SCAN meeting, to sort of like work together to provide the best for the children and victims. Okay, so besides all that I mentioned, other things that we do is we do hospital and home visits. So sometimes when there is a abuse case, a rape case, the victim will be hospitalized. So we actually go to the hospital, but of course now during COVID we have not. But before this, we used to go to the hospitals and we visit them there to sort of like help them then and there itself. Because imagine after going through such a severe abuse and all that, and you're already in a hospital, sometimes you feel alone, nobody there. So we go there and we provide them some support um, during their time in the hospital as well, or even home visit. If they are injured, they can't leave the house, we go and visit them in their home. And besides all that, we also provide talks. We do talks, campaigns, a lot of programs outside to create awareness, because one of our jobs within this D11 is to prevent these kind of cases, to create awareness to the public as well as to prevent them from becoming victims. So we tell them what they should do if they are a victim, or how to identify if you are actually in the risk group, high risk group of becoming a victim, things like that. So many times when we go to schools and give talks, a lot of times children disclose information to us about some abuse that's happening at home, some incest that's happening at home, things like that. So it's very good that we do this kind of programs to create awareness. So this is the Child Interview Center in Bukit Aman. So what is a Child Interview Center and how is it different from the Victim Care Center? Okay, so back to the founder of the VCC just now, ASP Ong Chin Lan. So I just took these snippets from the newspaper article which was in the internet. So basically, she formed this child interview center also based on the UK system, which I told you she was working there for some time with the police department there. So they also had this concept, the child interview center. So what this child interview center is supposed to do is, when there's a case involving a child, okay, so prior to the existence of the CIC, we used to bring the child to the court, in front of the judge, in front of the lawyers, to share what happened to them. So imagine the child already having gone through abuse and everything, and then they go to the balai to make report, and on top of that, they have to go to court, face some random strangers, and again share what happened. So it's very traumatizing for the children. So that's when this concept came about, the Child Interview Center. So now in Malaysia, we only use this system when it involves child cases. So what happens is, when there is a case, a report made, that means the child says, okay, I was sexually abused by my father or stepfather or whatever. So the victim will be brought to CIC. There's a special room where there's a recording camera. It's like a soundproof room with a camera, with the mic, everything in it. So the child will be interviewed by a trained police officer who will not be wearing uniform. Like I told you, it's a very friendly, child-friendly place, so the child feels comfortable. So even before the interview is done, there's a playroom where we, like me and the police officer, will actually build rapport with the child to get them comfortable enough to be able to open up. So once the child feels comfortable, we bring them to this room. It's called a recording room, and the child will tell the whole story on camera. So that CD will be brought to court and will be used as evidence. So we don't need to bring the child anymore to court. So it saves the child some extra unnecessary trauma and, again, sharing the story again and again. So that is what CIC's role is. So this is some of the pictures of the Bukit Aman Child Interview Center. So you can see it's like totally not even part of the Balai or even part of the Bukit Aman. And you can see the house is not even blue. It's yellow, and it has a playroom, it has a technical room, and you can see below there is the interview room with teddy bears and stuff. And they have a bedroom there in case victims come from far and need a place to stay overnight. They can stay there. And yeah, so it's basically a very homely environment. This is the one in IPK KL. Also, you can see it's very comfortable, child-friendly, very homely kind of environment. And this is the one that I work at. The whole house is called the Child Interview Center. And of course, my room within that whole house is called the Victim Care Center. So as you can see, it has the recording room, the interview room, a playroom, a bedroom, and of course, our playroom is not as how to say as the Changi as the Bukit Aman one, because we only had like a small budget to work with. So, but whatever is supposed to be in the SOP of a CIC room, a CIC center, we have it. So we have this. If you can see the middle picture, it's actually a dolls, right? It's not just any normal doll. It's called anatomy dolls. So this is anatomy dolls. It actually has private parts. So it's imported from the US. It's very expensive. So why we use anatomy dolls is when the child is being in the interview room and she's disclosing, for example, being raped by her grandfather or stepfather or whoever. So maybe when she's talking about it, about herself, like she's referring to herself, she may be a bit more shy or reserved to share her details. But when you are projecting it on this doll, so you take the doll that represents, you will tell her, okay, which doll you feel represents yourself. So she'll take that small girl, and then she'll take the old man as a grandpa. So she will actually be telling the story of what happened to her, but using dolls. And of course, on camera, on video, she will show the action of what the grandfather doll did to the child doll. So it's all taken on camera, on video, and it saves the child a lot of trauma again, and it helps the child to open up more lah. I would say it really helps the child open up more. So yes, the VCC has served a lot of victims, and it definitely has provided a lot of psychological care to the victims and to their family. And I think that the move of the government to create the existence of this VCC has been very successful and very helpful. And now what we are trying to do is we're trying to get more positions of psychology officers within each state, because like I said, one person covering the whole state, we are unable to reach to all the victims. Sometimes we have to kind of pick and choose the severe cases uh, to provide them more the immediate care compared to like taking every case. So hopefully in the long run, because this is quite new, I mean considered quite new since 2003. So maybe in a few years time, we hope that it expands, we can reach more people and help more victims. So these are the contact details. Of course, there's VCCs in every state. So if you are in KL, you need to contact the one in KL. If you are in Selangor, you need to contact the VCC in Selangor. So it goes case by case depending on the state. So like if, for example, you have a victim in Selangor, you can't contact me to cover the case because we have this SOP where each states cover their own cases. So I guess that's a bit about, yeah, that's a bit about what the VCC is about. And then I pass the floor back to Mr. Chris.
Yes, thank you, Deborah, for the enlightening talk on Victim Care Center, where now we get to know what is the effect to the victim, the best interest of the child is taken care of. So I'm very happy to know that we have come forward in taken big strides in taking care of the child victims that come to us.
Yes.
I see any questions in the chat room. There's no questions. Anybody would like to have a live question? Please feel free to unmute yourself and forward the question to Ms. Deborah. Because we have a person who's working in the system. It's very important that in the system, in the police force. So she's able to give us an insight in what's happening once a report is done and the whole process. So it's something that we should take advantage of.
There's one question, I think, in the chat. The question is there a VCC in Kuching or Sarawak?
Oh, yes. It's from Tina Eng. Is
Mm.
a VCC in Kuching or Sarawak? Okay. Please, Ms. Deborah.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, every state there's one. So of course, the one in Sarawak, we have one in the IPK. So that VCO will have to cover the whole of Sarawak, which sometimes is almost impossible because I believe some places it's like few hours the distance from where she actually works. So, but yes, there is a a victim care officer in Sarawak in the IPK. But yeah, maybe certain cases may take longer for her to reach compared to certain cases that are nearer to IPK, things like that. She has to make arrangement lah sometimes.
Yeah, there's another question from Alexander Johnson. How do we get or share contacts of the VCCs of different states? That's his first question. Second question is a police report needed before the case is passed on to the VCC?
Okay, so how do we get or share contacts at the VCC? Actually, right now we don't have a online portal with all our names and details on it because basically, if you want to contact one of us, all you have to do is contact D11 of the IPK. So if you contact IPK, you call the main hotline of IPK, whichever state you're in. You just say that, okay, I want to be connected to Unit D11, Jabatan Siasatan Jenayah. So once they connect you to D11, you just ask pegawai psychology or victim care officer, and you'll be able to already be connected to the victim care officer. The second part is whether a police report is needed. Yes. Technically, generally, the answer is yes, because only then we can actually provide the care, because our services can sometimes overlap with services from the hospital or even JKM. Okay, sometimes the victim comes to us and they have already seen the counselor in hospital or in JKM. So what differs between us and the other agencies is ours, there has been a police report made. Okay, so usually from the police report, that's when we can contact the victim and ask them, okay, would you like to come for counseling? We come across your case. Would you like to come for counseling? So that then it's up to the victim whether they want to come. But there are some cases, like we randomly get a phone call or someone refers them to us saying that, okay, this person is going through domestic violence. They're not too sure what to do. Can they just come and see you to get some input or advice? We are open to that as well. So in that case, they don't have a report yet. But usually when they come to us, then we tell them that these are the options you have and what you can do in your situation.
Okay, the following question is from Faribel. Thank you, Ms. Deborah. The unit seems small. How are resources managed like in Selangor, large population, and in Sabah and Sarawak, where geographical area is challenged? That's the first question. And number two, do you think working with NGOs will be able to fill the gaps? Sorry, she mentioned again. Do you think working with NGOs to fill the gaps is a recommendation? She's asking you whether it's good or bad.
Yes, so it is. That's why I mentioned earlier, we are in the process of sending in papers to JPA to increase our number of officers because of certain states that are big. Like I think Sarawak or Sabah, they have to go by flight sometimes to visit a victim because they're so far away. So yes, we are not able to cover or provide the best services for all the victims due to these limited resources. So yes, we do work with NGOs sometimes, or even NGOs themselves sometimes contact us because like even for me in Seremban, I work together with this shelter home. So they actually sometimes call us when there's domestic violence victims, can you please come and meet this victim in our center? So we do work with NGOs. And what is the second part? Yeah, so I think I answered that part. Yeah, we do work with NGOs, and it is a good effort actually to work together within government agencies and also non-government agencies.
The next question is from Evelyn Pang. The VCC was formed in 2003. How is it that there is still not enough VCO officers, the officers, team care officers throughout the country? And
Yes.
the question is, how is recruitment done? So for young psychological officers, how do they enter into the system?
Yeah, I know. This is the same question we sometimes question ourselves as well. Why it's so hard to get new positions within the department? But how to say? There's a long process and there is a whole system to recruiting new officers, because there are certain budgets. Again, it all goes back to budgets. And we know how hard it is sometimes for us government servants to request for budgets. Even sometimes the programs we want to have, there's no budget. So we fork out our own money to do programs, things like that. So the answer to that question is why there's not enough VCO throughout the country is because of lack of budget. Because if they want to hire another VCO, it means they have to remove another post of a lower rank, like maybe two assistance posts will make up one psychology officer post. It works like that. They have to cut off somewhere to make up for something else. So if we take away two assistant psychology officers, then what happens to them? We are taking away their position. So there's a whole complication, kind of a debate thingy going on there. But we hope in the future when there's more budget allocated to the PDRM for these kind of things, we will be able to increase the number of VCOs within the country. As for now, what we do best is we try to work together with other agencies, like I tell you. So a lot of times we work together with JKM because JKM also has counselors. A lot of times we work together with the hospital. Hospitals also has counselors. So if we feel we cannot manage, we always outsource. Or if they feel they cannot manage, they also work together with us. So we don't just like, oh, I look after my clients, you look after your clients. No, we work together. And how is recruitment done? Okay, during my time, which was in 2011, when I first joined, it was that means they look at your qualifications. If you fulfill the degree qualification, you can apply to SPA, Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Awam. From SPA, then they will call you for interview. After the interview, then they decide whether you are hired or not hired and where you'll be posted. So we do not apply directly to be posted within PDRM. It's just by, how to say, there was a vacancy, so there was a need for that position. So therefore, we get posted to the PDRM. So that I have friends or colleagues who are psychology officers who work in hospitals, who work in polytechnic, who work in penjara. So it all depends on where the need is. So that's how the recruitment works.
Okay, the following question is from Tien Pereira. Is there any group of children particularly prone or at increased risk of sexual abuse? That's one. And who are the most common perpetrators?
Okay, is there any group of children particularly prone? Okay. I wouldn't say there's okay. A lot of cases that I meet, generally, I mean, these are based on my experience, not on real statistics that we collected from anywhere, right? This is based on my 10 years dealing with this kind of cases. A lot of times, the victims that end up becoming victims are those maybe from like outskirts, okay, like Felda, like this kampung areas, or they come from really huge families where the parents sometimes are unable to monitor each child, so the child goes astray sometimes. And when I'm talking about sexual abuse, like I said, it also includes teenagers, because children in Malaysia means 18 and below. So a lot of times, like 14 years old, 15 years old, they're already sexually active with boyfriends, but it's considered rape because it's below 16. Okay, so the common perpetrators so far we see are usually people they know, neighbors, family members, relatives, uh, teachers, religious centers, sometimes the people who they trust, like sometimes the monk, sometimes the ustad, things like that. So it's usually people that they know are the ones who are easier to groom the child to become a victim of sexual abuse.
From Tina Eng, these days pornography is very prevalent. Do you see an increase in abuse cases related to this pornography?
Yes, I have a whole how to say, I have a whole talk just on dangers of pornography because in recent days, in recent years, as social media has become more popular, pornography also has become very popular. So when I meet with my victims or the child perpetrators, right? Like I had a case 2 weeks ago. He was 12. He was 12 years old, and he raped or he was having sex with a 8-year-old girl, 12-year-old, 8-year-old, and they have been doing it for past 3 years. So you imagine how young the girl was and how young he was. And of course, you'd be wondering where on earth they learn. And usually it all roots back to pornography. Yes, so increase of cases have been due to pornography. So that's why I always, even a few weeks ago, I did a talk about dangers of pornography and how it affects children, how it affects teens and adults as well. It breaks a lot of marriages, this pornography. Okay.
Okay, from Angie Garrett, can the victims make report in VCC like a case in one-stop crisis center at the hospital? Can they make it the same report? I mean, report. Sometimes the child may be traumatized. So at least when they are in a conducive environment like VCC, they can talk confidently with the VCC officer. I mean, making a report.
Yeah. Um, no, they are not able to make a police report at VCC because me and my sister, we are not police officers. So we have no how to say, we are not in any way allowed to take a police report from the victim. So they have to make it in the one-stop crisis center, the hospital, or any balai. But what they can do is, for example, usually now most of the balais also are aware of this. If the victim is a child, I mean, if it's a girl, a female victim, even if it's a child or an adult, they can always request that they have a triage room. Even in balais, they have a bilik triage. You can request to be taken to their room and be interviewed by a female police officer. So these are the little efforts that currently the PDRM provides to kind of make the child or the woman victim more comfortable when they want to talk about their case. But so yeah, to the answer to the question is no, they are not able to make a report within the VCC, but only after the report is done, then they can come to us and we can do the psychological part to help. If they say they want to talk further about their case, then yes, we can help in that way.
But if I may add, this proposal is a very good proposal because I took victim once to make a report at Balai. It was quite traumatic because there are many people there, inquiry, questions. So it's a good proposal. I feel that when they get a report, they bring it to the BCC for a police report to be done. You saw the environment. Okay. The next question from Thomas Mu. Is it possible to train volunteers, especially retirees, to assist?
Actually, this was also one of the efforts that our retired ASP Ong Chen Lan, she actually proposed this when she was going to retire. It was one of her efforts to actually, because due to no budget. Right? Okay. All right. So due to lack of budget, right? So they thought, okay, why don't hire volunteers or people who are retired who are able to assist. So it was proposed, but so far no action has been taken yet lah. But I think in the long term, it is possible lah that this could be done as one of the efforts to increase the manpower within the VCC.
Okay, from Evelyn Pang, how do the public know there's any vacancy for VCO?
The public will not know there's any vacancy for VCO because the public cannot apply to be a VCO. It's all based on JPA. So like I said, we do not choose where we are posted. When you apply to a government position, you are just, how to say, uh, you just give yourself to them and they decide your fate. So when I got my letter to say that, okay, I got a job in the government service, I was not sure where I was going to be posted, whether I was going to be sent to Sabah, Sarawak, God knows where, I had no idea. So only when I went to get my letter, the offer letter, that's when they said, okay, you be posted within Kementerian Dalam Negeri. And that too, I was like, okay, KDN means what? There's penjara, there's PDRM, there's bomber, so many things, right? So I had to go to KDN. And then there already they said that, okay, there's a vacancy in IPK Negeri Sembilan, so you can be posted there. So it's all by, how to say, it's all through JPA lah, basically. Nothing through, no one will know and you can't apply directly to it.
And from Stella Chin, after the police report is lodged on child abuse, is referral to VCC automatic?
It's not automatic because okay, usually the investigation officers are aware of the existence of the victim care officers, and usually they should inform the victim that, okay, there is such services available and whether you require them. But again, it has not taken place very systematically, I would say. Like, not all investigation officers inform the victims of the services. So sometimes myself, I'll print out the reports on a daily basis, and I myself will call the victims for certain cases and tell them that, okay, would you like to come for counseling? So like I said, because we cannot meet every single case, so sometimes certain cases we skip, but they are entitled to the service. So if ever a victim goes to a police station, they can always tell the police officer that I want counseling services. Can you please refer me to them? So then we can get connected and get the client referred to us.
Okay, I have another question regarding the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any, from sister, is there any data of suicide rate among the victims, especially during this lockdown? Is it worrying? Thank you. Is it worrying issue, suicide among victims of child?
Well, if suicide cases generally during this pandemic, I think there's a lot of statistics on the internet now talking about the number of suicide cases and all that. But it's not something that we VCC specifically focus on or do some data collection on it. No, because our main job scope is to provide the care for those who making reports. We don't cover the whole of Malaysia population of victims or suicide cases. That's not part of what we do lah in the VCC.
So, but is this suicide issue, is it a worrying case for you all, since you are in the system? The next question was asked, is it a worrying phenomenon?
I think generally for all mental health professions, we are worried about this because it is on the rise, definitely. So that's why I see a lot of my fellow colleagues, those in the private sector, those in other agencies, sometimes they're just offering like, free services. They're offering any form of help to provide some kind of services or help to these kind of victims or potential or those who are thinking of suicide. So it is alarming, and I feel that there are a lot of channels, resources, and efforts being done right now to help in reducing the number of people who are even thinking of suicide at this point in time lah.
Thank you. From Bernardine, with alarmingly increase in cases at so young age, especially involving people known to the victims, example, family members, is there or what is the immediate intervention to address this by the police or the government?
Okay, wait, let me read. Okay, so yeah, the victims come and usually the perpetrators are family members. So the immediate intervention that we do, okay, once the thing takes place, of course, they come to us already as a victim. So then, of course, JKM also gets involved automatically. When there's a child sexual abuse case where the victim is abused by a family member, JKM automatically gets involved. Jabatan Kebajikan Malaysia, right? So they will make sure that that perpetrator is not in the same house anymore with the victim. So either the perpetrator, if he's the father or stepfather, he's already being arrested, put into jail, while the investigation going on. Or the victim, if just say there's no one else to look after or whatever, JKM will take them under the shelter, under their care, until a family member like a grandparent or an aunt or relative, they go to court, appeal, saying that they can look after this child. Then the JKM will decide whether this child is safe to be with that family member. But the immediate intervention given is removing the child from the uh, from that person who is abusing the victim lah, to get the child into a safe place. And that is when the child is already a victim. But as I mentioned earlier, to avoid these kind of things happening, we do a lot of programs. Like I said, the PDRM, VVCOs, we go to schools. A lot of times we go to schools, kindergartens, we talk about safe touch, unsafe touch, we talk about different kind of love, like what is fatherly love versus what is unsafe kind of love, what is sexual grooming, who are pedophiles, things like that. So we create a lot of awareness, and we talk using proper terms, because a lot of times people, this whole sex topic is very taboo, talking about vagina, talking about penis, so we in schools and all that, we straight we talk, this is a vagina, things like that. We use the correct terms, and that's how it's supposed to be actually. Because when a child comes to us to report a case, there are cases that are so difficult to get the child to explain what's happening. Because for example, a Malay kid to come and say, dia telah sentuh katak saya, so we have to ask, okay, katak tu apa? Oh, katak tu kat situ lah, so when you teach a child the proper terms from the early stage, they are able to tell you exactly what happened, and you are able to identify straight away that, oh, someone is touching her private part, for example, things like that. So we do those kind of campaigns and awareness for public in those areas.
Next question for Evelyn Pang. When a VCO officer goes for home visit to a victim in a patrol car, that won't be confidential anymore. Everyone in the neighborhood would know them about the victim.
Well, that's why when we are going for home visits, we go with the consent of the family. If they are okay with us coming to their home, that means they are okay with us coming with the petrol car or whatever. Because we also have to safeguard ourselves when we are representing PDRM. We have to go using the proper channels. We can't just go on my own, because end of the day they can always come and turn the story around, say that, oh, she came unannounced, or she came, did this to me, touched me here, touched me there. There's a lot of things that could possibly happen. So we have to go through the proper channels using the proper way, and of course we get their permission. We don't just randomly appear in their house and surprise them like, oh, okay, we're here to see you. No lah, we always call them first.
Alice Andrew, what is the number of
D11?
D11, yes. What is the number of D11?
I think it can be found on the internet. I don't have it offhand, but these are things that you can actually Google from the internet. Once you find the number of your IPK nearest you, like let's say you're in KL means you find IPK KL. From there itself, you can trace D11. If you call the IPK, you just say, can you please sambung me to D11? They will already connect you to D11.
Okay, from Angie Garrett again. How long can a victim stay at victim care center? If the second one, if the perpetrator is a family member, how can a VCO officer help her?
Okay, basically the victim does not stay at the VCC. The VCC is not a shelter home. The reason why there's a bedroom in the CIC is only for the recording of the statement purpose. That means if they come, they say they come all the way from, for example, Pahang, and they have to use our recording service in Negeri Sembilan because the case happened in Negeri Sembilan, for example. So we allow them to stay one night if they are unable to travel back and forth the same day. But we do not provide shelter home to the victims. That is not part of our job. Shelter home is only under JKM. So again, there's a difference between all the different agencies. So the victim cannot stay at VCC. We only provide the counseling and then they go back home. That's it. If the perpetrator is a family member, how can a VCC officer help? Again, that part is under JKM. So I do not even meet the suspect, the perpetrator, because as I said earlier, that if the perpetrator is an adult above 18, they fall under the penjara category. That means the psychology officer in penjara will provide their services to the perpetrator. I only focus on the perpetrators who are below 18, and if they're family members, if they're below 18, like a brother or a cousin or whatever, I do counsel the perpetrator But of course, not at the same time as the victim lah. We make sure that they are different timing, and JKM will be the ones who make sure that the perpetrator and the victim are not in the same house or the same place of where they live lah.
Okay, from Tian Pereira again. Andrea Mary from YouTube asks, how can members of the public volunteer or help out?
Generally, at the moment now, we don't have such a thing where volunteers can help the VCE or VCO or things like that. The only way members or public can volunteer is through NGOs. And I think in KL and all, there's so many NGOs that are available. So though if you want to assist these children who are abused, then you have to go through NGOs at the moment. Because at the moment, government services like, PDRM and all that, are not we don't have this option where volunteers can come in to help within our services. No.
Okay. Next question from Titus Pereira. The mentally challenged are defenseless and usually targeted. How can they be helped?
Okay. Mentally challenged. It depends also what category. So sometimes there are cases where the victim may be like 17 or 16, quite a big child, but because they are mentally challenged. So in the report we'll see that the doctor has said that kanak-kanak ini ataupun remaja ini adalah lembam, slow learner, things like that. So we know that they are maybe unable to give a proper statement like how an adult can give a statement to the police. So usually we still use the CIC to take their statement, which means like I told you lah, we bring them to that CIC, that home, right, the home setting. We have the recording room. We allow them to use the dolls if they need to. So the way that the police interviews that person, that teenager, would also be very like childlike lah, depending on how the teenager responds. If their IQ level is at the IQ level of a 8-year-old or 9-year-old, then of course the police questions have to be also at that level. So that's why I said the police officer who interviews at the child interview center, they are trained and they have a certification to interview these children at the child interview center. So those are the services that we can offer within the PDRM for victims who have made reports who are mentally challenged. But if you're talking about the general public of those mentally challenged and being targeted, I guess that falls under the category where we do programs and awareness campaigns and things like that to kind of create awareness. So far, I wouldn't say that we specifically focus on, like, just say going to a special home and focus on them. We have not done that so far, but I wouldn't say that maybe there are probably JKM or other agencies who maybe focus more on those group of people. But like I said, if ever there is a need of a center who requires us to do a program with them, a talk, they can always just invite us. We are open to invitations by any NGO, public organization, things like that. So we go and give the talk about these kind of things that we do and create awareness and things like that.
From Alice Andrew, what does IPK stand for?
IPK is Ibu Pejabat Police Contingent. So in every state, there will be one IPK. So that is like a HQ. Then there'll be other IPDs. So people always confuse IPD, IPK. Okay, so IPK is the head, like the contingent of the HQ of the contingent. So like all the IPKs come under Bukit Aman. So Bukit Aman is like the mother of everything. Then every state will have their own IPK. And under the IPK are all the IPDs. IPDs are Ibu Pejabat Polis Daerah. So all the IPDs report to IPK and IPK report to Bukit Aman. So that's the system.
Okay, also from Alice Andrew, what about autistic children?
If they may be 17 or 18, but if they are functioning at a lower child's level, like an 8 or 9-year-old, then we interview them based on that level. That is the care that we provide for those victims who make a police report. But if they are just generally out there and they haven't made a report and they're autistic and they're abused, then usually we wouldn't even know about it because there's no report done. So that's when I think like other agencies will probably be aware lah, maybe JKM or or things like or NGOs, those kind of services. Maybe they might be able to provide whatever care that's needed if it's not a police report case.
Okay, Deborah, I got a question. I'll just break up a bit.
Yep.
Okay. Sex issue is a taboo issue. We all know that. But not for all, but for most of the people, especially those who are not aware enough. Is there any advice based on your experience personally on to how to break this stigma of talking about sex so that instead of the victim suffering silently, we might be able to help them to speak up and ask them to channel it to a proper channel or safe place lah. So,
Okay. So basically, yes, sex has always been a taboo topic, but I would say it has come a long way compared to maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago to now. Like, I think if it was like when my mom was a teenager, if she was to speak to my grandmother about anything relating to like sexual things, she'll probably get a slap on her face. But like you see, when I grew up as a teenager, I was able to speak to my mom about it. Like if I heard something from someone, I can actually ask her about it and she would be open to talk about it. So I think over the years, as from generation to generation, people have become more open to talking about certain things. And sometimes the importance of being able to talk about it is what makes a person lesser vulnerable to be a victim. So a lot of my cases that come, the victims who come, or even the child suspects, the child perpetrators who come, right? When I meet them and I do my sessions with them, I find out a lot of times the parents are not open to talk about it. Like especially, like I said, those who are not very educated families who, for them, these kind of things all, tak boleh cakap, ini apa ni, tapi, they straight away block the child from asking, or, if, for example, if the child came across a porn video, if the child told the parents about it, the parents will, tak boleh tengok macam tu, apa ni, they straight away scold the child, they block the child from even, so the child is curious, like, what is this video all about? Or, so the child will go and ask the friends. And that's exactly what happened to that case. There was an 8-year-old boy who molested a 3-year-old girl. He said that his friend told him that you should try having sex with your girlfriend. It's very nice. So imagine, these are 8-year-olds. So that 8-year-old friend had a girlfriend, but this 8-year-old boy didn't have a girlfriend. So who is the victim? It was a small girl who used to come to his house for babysitting. The mother is a babysitter. So he tried these things on that 3-year-old girl. So it all started with porn, and it started with unable to talk about these kind of things. And sometimes the parents are in denial. Like the parents are telling me, anak saya dia pakai handphone, dia tak pandai tengok benda-benda macam tu. Dia main game je. But when I ask the boy, he says, yeah, he knows how to Google. He knows, sometimes kids are smarter than we think. So how to break this taboo is, for me, is there needs to be more talking about it. That means sometimes even before the child even brings this up, explain to them about safe touch, unsafe touch, what to do if someone touches you here, things like that. So it becomes something where they are comfortable to talk about.
Another part 2 of the question is, what are the common signs of the victims that you come across for child abuse that they...
Common signs of the victims? Well, it depends again on physical abuse or sexual abuse. If physical abuse means like case pendaraan, like, where kena hitting, whacking, kicking and all that, then you will see marks on the body. That's how most of the cases get reported. Because, for example, there's a teacher sees that the boy comes to school every day with like bruises here, there and all that. So the teacher asks what's happening. And then that's how the whole story comes about. The boy will say that, kena pukul ke, pengasuh pukul ke, whatever lah. So that's physical abuse is easier to see because the marks are on the body. Sexual abuse sometimes is more psychological symptoms. So for example, a child might regress back to, like, for example, they're already like maybe 7, 8 years old, but suddenly they are bedwetting at night when there's a habit that happened maybe when they were 3 or 4 years old, but it didn't happen for a long time. So some of the psychological symptoms to detect when a child is being abused or that they're going through some very traumatic experience in their life is like this. They sometimes start bedwetting at night. they start having nightmares, loss of appetite. They start to keep to themselves. They they might even talk about, you know, like things that maybe they never spoke about before. Like maybe they might suddenly ask about sexual things, or they might suddenly touch themselves. So some strange behaviors that people that you normally don't notice, suddenly they might do. Sometimes even children get exposed through STDs. So they go to the clinic because they tell the parent that they're itchy in their private part. So the parent will just think that, oh, okay, maybe having some rash or whatever. Go to a clinic, the doctor checks and says that no, this is not normal. This is an STD, and that's how again the story comes out that actually yes, the child was abused by so and so, things like that. So with children sexual cases, parents need to be very aware of certain behavioral change in their child, or in terms of emotional change in their child, things like that.
From Tina Eng, giving of talks such as this service you mentioned, just mentioned, is
Mm-hmm.
service available in Kuching?
Yes, whole of Malaysia. Any contingent, you just have to contact the D11, the psychology officer, and they can arrange a talk for you. Every state.
Okay, okay. From Titus Pereira, was there a case of children in a shelter abused by caregivers, inverted comma, caregivers?
Yeah, many times. There are many cases like that. Sometimes the most trusted people might be your abusers as well. So a lot of times we had cases from shelter homes where the caretakers abused the children, made use of them for monetary gains, things like that. Yeah.
Okay, from Angie Garrett, what VCC, a Victim Care Center, do giving talks to children in schools are more on awareness program campaign to them, but sometimes they are threatened by the perpetrators not to tell people. So now the question is, do you have any awareness program for adults, as they are the perpetrators, and the children are the victims? So programs for adults.
Yeah, we do programs for adults as well. Sometimes schools, when they invite us during like the PTA kind of meetings, right? Parent teachers meetings. So they will have a slot, especially like 1 hour talk for us to talk about these kind of things to the parents. And again, it's like I said, it's open to any organization, or even we sometimes randomly, if we have allocated certain programs, we go to like public places, like, you know, maybe Felda or some Dewan Orang Ramai or whatever, and we talk to the public adults. We talk about awareness for them, their family, and their children. And also, in a way, when we talk about these things, if they are actually a perpetrator, then they will know that, okay, I should not be doing these things or things like that lah. Because in a day, the case will be exposed, and they are going to be caught for it lah. So yes, we do talk to adults. We talk to any group of people, from kindergarten children to teens to adults, any group.
This is a question to Father William. Is this session recorded, Father William? Okay, I'll reply later. Okay, from Evelyn Pang. Most parents are educated now, and sex education is no longer a taboo, especially in the urban areas.
Maybe in your experience, maybe Evelyn Pang would have dealt with most parents who are, how to say, more open to talking about this topic. But personally, when I see the victims coming to my office, and when when I counsel the victim and also talk to the parents, a lot of times the parents have not spoken to their child about these things. Maybe not intentionally lah. Maybe they feel that, okay lah, my child is still only 4 years old, 5 years old. No need to talk about it just yet lah. But if you look at it now, if 6-year-olds can already be having sex, 7-year-old can already be having sex, I think the sooner we expose them in a proper way, teaching them about what can and cannot be done to their body, things like that, is better than they being touched by somebody else and told that, oh, that's actually correct, it's okay, it's safe, you know. So then they will feel that, oh, okay, what's happening to me is normal, and then they won't tell a parent about it, and it becomes a trend that goes on for years and years until one day she realizes that she's the victim of abuse. So as much as we are, maybe yes, more and more parents are educated, and more parents are talking about sex, but not everyone yet. There are still a lot of people out there who don't really talk about this to their kids.
Chris, just to answer the
Thank you,
question
Madan.
earlier, it's actually on YouTube ArchCare Live. So the recording is actually can be viewed there. ArchCare YouTube, you can actually view the recording. So it is actually going on live. And later, if you can Google YouTube ArchCare, on YouTube ArchCare, you can also watch it there. So it is available.
Thank you, Madan. Okay, from Rita Wong, can we the public pay a visit to the CIC?
Not really lah. Actually, we don't really open it to public. I don't know why, but maybe due to certain procedure or systems within the PDRM, I'm not sure. But no, it's not open to the public for like visitation and all that. Only those victims who come, then they know that, you know, the place is located where. I guess it's also due to privacy issues lah. I mean, like, imagine if everybody knows about this place, where it is, then you might get random people appearing to this place, and if just say a child is being interviewed in this place, you know, it might be uncomfortable having random people outside, things like that. So I think it's more for the best interest of the child and victims who come, that this place kind of kept, it's not secret. I mean, like, people generally know where it is, but not everybody knows where it is. You know what I mean? Like, even the one in Bukit Aman, it's near to Negara, but you wouldn't exactly know where it is near to Negara unless you really go looking for it where it is, you know? So it's kind of like hidden, but it's not like meant to be hidden lah. But generally, it's not easily accessible to everybody lah.
Titus Pereira again. Elderly women teachers extra abusing younger boys. She says quite common abroad. How about here in Malaysia?
Oh, haven't really come across this kind of case so far. No. I mean, maybe there are, but so far in my 10 years, no, I have not come across a case where an elderly woman abusing a young boy. I've had elderly men abusing young boys. I've had boys and boys abusing each other, but so far, elderly woman and young boy, not so common here lah.
Okay, from TP, from your professional point of view, what's the long-term impact of sexual abuse on kids? Then second question, what happens if these children don't get the privilege of counseling? Long-term effect, and what's the effect if they don't have this type of counseling?
Okay. Generally, the long-term effect of sexual abuse on any child is when they grow up, they may have issues with their relationship with their spouse. A lot of times, as a child, if they are being sexually abused, over the years, they may their own defense mechanism may actually get them to sort of like repress the memory. So they may not be so affected by it as they grow up. But suddenly, when they're married and you know when they're starting to have sexual intercourse, things like that, suddenly the memory might be triggered back, and maybe they might suddenly be traumatized. They may not even want to have sexual intercourse, and then the husband will be like, okay, what's happening? So those are the kind of long-term effects that can happen to a child who has been sexually abused. But what happens if the child doesn't get counseling? It's not the end of the world, because again, children are very resilient. So they have their own defense mechanisms within themselves to adapt to situations in life. So having counseling, of course, helps it and makes things easier for them. You know, they're able to talk about it, they're able to learn new skills or learn ways to adapt, things like that. But those who do not get counseling, generally their own system in their body or their mind will be able to how to say, build a kind of a way for them to live life as normal as possible and adapt to life. But there's no guarantee that in the future, even for someone who goes for counseling, there's no guarantee in the future that it will not suddenly come back to their memory. Like just recently, we had a case in D11 Negeri Sembilan, a former athlete. He was a swimmer. After 35 years, he's making a report saying that he was sexually molested by his trainer when he was in his teenage years. But now he's like in his 40s, and he's now only making a report. So, you know, it's no guarantee that the memory will, once it's gone forever. It can always come back in the future. But I wouldn't say that if you don't have counseling means that's it, you're doomed. No, you're not. You're resilient enough to live on your life as normal as possible, to adapt to life, to be strong and all that. But of course, when you grow up and suddenly you feel these kind of things come up and you feel that, oh, why is this memory popping up? Or why do I feel this way? Then as an adult, you can always still go for counseling. Doesn't mean when you're abused as a child, you can only go counseling as a child. No. A lot of cases, adults suddenly go for counseling when they suddenly remember memories of them when they were a child, or they want to explore childhood trauma. They go for counseling as an adult, which is still is fine. It still is helpful for them to overcome their childhood trauma.
Let's see any more questions. Deborah, I'll ask one question.
Sure.
Okay, how do we make sure the child is a competent witness? Because you say the IO will bring the child to you for the further questioning. So how do we make to help assist the child to be a competent witness in court?
How to assist a child to be a competent victim?
Because you are the one who's trying to get the information out, right?
You see, we can only assist the IO in terms of getting the story out of the child, right? But we cannot forget our role as a counselor. And our role as a counselor means we have to be all listening ears and not, how to say, not trying to dig out things from the victim if they don't want to disclose. So sometimes, like police will tell, you cuba korek, pasti dia tipu ni, you cuba korek sampai dia cakap benar. You see, I cannot betray the trust of my client and tell the child that, you know what, I think you're not telling the truth, you better tell the truth now, even though I know it's not the truth. But my role as a counselor is to just listen and go with the flow and help the child based on his story, even if it's the made up story or whatever. It's not my role to say that you're lying, and it's not my role. But the officer can do that in their interrogation, in their interview. If they feel there's something fishy and if they feel that the child is lying, then yes, they can bring it out and they can point it out to the child. Sometimes they even have to use certain, like, raise voice a bit, because they have child perpetrators, like I said, the child perpetrators who lie blatantly. They are so, like, uh how do you say, it comes so naturally to lie that sometimes the police have to raise voice a bit to get the truth out of that person. So it so that's where the role differs between the counselor and the IO. So my role, I cannot really groom that child to be a expert witness in the court. I can only assist in the psychological part, the emotional part, the traumatic part. But the IO, when he or she is interviewing the child and getting the statement of the child, he can guide the child to say, okay, this later on in court, or later on, if these are things that you can highlight, things like that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have got a question from His Grace, Archbishop Simon Paul of Kuching. Is a report of sexual abuse at police station automatically referred to VCC, or a specific request has to be made? That's the first question. Because in our last session, when our church counseling office made arrangement for police report in police station, this was not handled professionally, as it was advised not to proceed with the report. Okay, the people's perspective is that most cases can really be brought to justice. So what do you comment on that?
Okay, the first part is whether the case is automatically referred to VCC, which I think I answered earlier as well, where no, it's not automatic. It's sometimes it's sometimes suggested by the IO to the victim, or the victim officer the VCO will actually contact the victim directly, or the victim themselves can tell the IO that I would like counseling services. So it's not an automatic thing. It's not like as soon as you make a report, automatically you'll be referred to VCC. No, it doesn't work that way. So the second part is this was not handled professionally, and okay, yeah, very common. There are a lot of cases that sometimes the IO, especially the younger ones, immature ones, they kind of advise the victim or the family, lebih baik you tarik balik ataupun lebih baik you jangan buat. Those I would say are like one of the two cases that is exception to the rule lah. Generally, most of the investigation officers usually take the case and do what is necessary. So for these cases that are exception to the rules, where they actually tell the victim or the family to not proceed with report, it is your right as the public to bring this matter up to a higher authority figure lah. That means, like, if that person is just the inspector in the balai, you can always say, okay, I would like to speak to your in charge. it's your right. Because a police officer, their job in the balai is to take a report. Anyone can make a report about anything, even your kambing kena curi ke, or you want to make a report about I'm feeling a bit paranoid, my neighbors always staring at me, and I'm a bit scared of my safety. You want to make a report, it's your right. Nobody can tell you not to make a report. So if ever you get turned down from to make a report, then it's your right to actually speak to their in charge lah. And
Archbishop rightly said that the people's perspective is that most cases cannot really be brought to justice lah. So
I think he wrote that can really be brought to justice.
Your Grace, amended cannot. So I mean the perspective lah. So we have to overcome that perspective.
Yes. It's like it's a stereotype out there lah. The people that is also one reason why a lot of victims do not come forward to make a report, even domestic violence cases. They feel that what's the use I go through the whole procedure, going to make the report, going through the whole court system, blah blah blah, and we don't know the outcome. But the thing is, there are a lot of cases that end up with good outcomes. The suspect being put in jail, they get charged accordingly. So I would say, if you have the choice or chance to make a report, go ahead and make a report and have a positive outlook at it lah. I mean, you need to go all out to help the police or whatever in terms of evidence, in terms of statement taking. Just cooperate together, and usually, so far, a lot of cases I deal with, the outcomes have been good. The suspects were put in jail, they were charged, things like that. It's only when there's lack of evidence, things like things which are out of the norm, then it'll be a bit difficult lah.
Okay, from Evelyn Pang, she's talking about a historical offense which is referred to in Australia, USA. What's the point of making a report only after 30 over years? The perpetrator may no longer be around.
Again, it's the right of the victim lah. It's like I said, the one that I was just talking to you about, after 35 years making a report, we cannot say that, oh, why are you making a report after 35 years? We're not going to take your report. No, we have to take the report, and we still have to investigate accordingly. And luckily for that case, the perpetrator is still alive, and even though he's in overseas at the moment, but the investigation officers have made attempts to contact the perpetrator and things like that lah. So even if it's after 20 years, 30 years, they can still report.
A question from YouTube by Melissa Swamipillai. How do you counsel from a child victim right to adulthood, as there are cases that are unreported? Many have carried trauma for a very long time.
Okay, so the question is?
So as a psychologist, he wants to know how are you going to solve this the burden of the trauma that they experience from childhood to adulthood.
That's why we as counselors, we spend years and years studying to become a counselor, so that we have tools, we have ways, techniques to deal with the victim based on their case. So every counselor specializes in different areas. Some specialize maybe on sexual cases, some specialize maybe on ADHD, some specialize on sexual cases, sexual marital problems, things like that. So how we counselors help the victim, it's hard to explain here, because every counselor has their own techniques. But our aim, end of the day, is to reduce the victims or our clients' trauma, psychological distress, or whatever it is they come to us for. So usually part of our counseling process is we always ask, what is your goal? What is it you want to achieve from this counseling that we are offering to you? So they themselves will say that, okay, I want to overcome my anxiety or my depression. So then we work together with the client, with the victim, to overcome this problem that they're having. So it's case to case basis.
Okay, another question from Ms. Grace, Archbishop Simon Paul. Do we need to consider the abused mental health to go through the court process?
Yeah, so that is why VCO, we the victim care officers, part of our service to the victims is, we can, if just say the victim feels that they want us to accompany them to the court, but of course we do not speak on their behalf or interfere in any way. We just accompany them, to be there by their side, to sort of show them that we are here for you, to support you. That we can do. that we can help to reduce their stress, their anxiety, the the anxiousness and all that. We can help in that way.
Okay, and there's another important question, which it happens because when defense counsel they question the victim, the next question is, how do we prepare and ensure that the victim will be mentally ready to testify in court? Because as an actor, will definitely get lawyers to discredit the victim, who would be a child then, and memories are jumbled because of trauma, very common fact.
Mm, wait, let me. The victim who would be a child then. Okay. Um, okay. So that is why when it's a child victim, we always use a CIC. I told you we do not bring the child to the court. So whatever that the child is, whatever the child discloses on that CD in that recording, which will be transcribed on paper. So word by word, whatever the child says during that whole recording of the statement will be transcribed on paper. That only will be brought to court. So the lawyers, the whoever want to dispute will have to dispute on that CD, on that statement, on that paper. And if just say they dispute something within that paper, then what the DPP does is they will send back to our investigation officer telling them that please do a second recording, adding on the statement from the child on these certain things, which maybe they didn't include it in the first statement. Maybe certain things which the lawyer feels that is important to add on to help to fight for their case. The lawyer will tell the IO, please do a second recording, add on these parts of add on these few more questions, which will be again recorded and brought to court lah.
So I just want to clarify. A defense counsel will try to discredit the victim, right? So the video is there. So if he wants to discredit, he puts a question. So how is the question?
This will all be done in court between lawyer to lawyer lah. So that means the video and the transcript will be there for them to view in court. So the lawyer will dispute that. Then our lawyer who's fighting for the victim will inform back the IO, please, I need you to add on this to the victim statement.
Oh, okay.
So there'll be another session lah. After that, there'll be a second court date to add on these other things lah.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
From Father William Michael, how different is OS One Stop Crisis Center with VCC, Victim Care Center, in terms of function?
OSCC, I think, is the one in the hospital, right? So they provide the immediate medical care, and they also have a police station there for the victim. So how we differ, I would say that is we help during the investigation process. So for example, in the OSCC, it's the first day they make the report, right? So they go for the medical checkup, they do the report, then they go back home. So we in the VCC, we do the follow-up care. We do the aftercare. That means like, okay, during the process, during the court cases, during the CIC recording, that's where VCC comes in.
So during the court cases, you also accompany the child?
We can.
If the special court, right? Children's court.
But like I said, usually the child doesn't need to go to court. But in exceptional cases, for example, a domestic violence victim or somebody who's an older girl who's raped or whatever she wants, they can request. It's not something we do automatically. It's if they request, we can offer that service.
Okay, Bishop Simon Paul added in, the child may be an adult in their 30s and adult as in your case, because the earlier question, the child would have been now an adult in the 30s and adult. So how is the questioning again?
So if the child is, so you mean the person is an adult when they make a report?
Yes.
So then we do not treat them as a child anymore. That means they don't need to come to CIC to do the whole video recording. We take their statement verbally lah. That means the police will take their statement on paper, and the adult have to go to court as normal as any other adult case lah. They go to court, they fight their own case. I mean, they have to stand in court and answer questions if needed to, things like that lah. They won't be treated as a child case, even though the abuse happened as a child. But they base it on the day he made the report, he or she makes the report.
As a follow-up with Father Michael's question, who manages the OSCC?
OSCC, I'm not too familiar with the whole OSCC because it's not something which I directly work with. But if I'm not mistaken, OSCC is under the hospital. it's an initiative under the hospital. So I think it's run under the social welfare part of the hospital, together with doctors, together with their psychology officer, together with their team lah. They have a team that runs the OSCC. So as I mentioned earlier, me and my assistant, we on a monthly basis or maybe bi-monthly basis, we meet up, we have an online meeting or even face-to-face meeting to discuss certain cases, like cases that the hospital have provided medical care, and cases where we have also met to provide our CIC services or VCC services. So we discuss together, we work together and say that, okay, we have done this part, they've done that part, so what's the next step for this child, things like that. But OICC, I think, is it's basically under the hospital, the GH.
Okay, I just want to go back to Archbishop Simon's question. I just want to clarify because you mentioned about the historical offense when 35 years ago the child was abused as a child. Mentioned, what if the child has grown up now, an adult in the 30s? So what is the process if that report is to be made now for child abuse during?
So this one I just now mentioned that they will be treated as an adult lah. That means even though the abuse took place when they were a kid, but because they made the report only now when they're in their 40s or 50s or whatever, so they don't need to go for CIC recording and all that. They take it verbally. The statement will be taken verbally. They call it 1-to-1 statement, and then they will be present in court. Things like that lah. As an adult lah, they'll be treated as an adult.
From Alice Andrew, do you help the victims physically abused by the caretakers or teachers? Because she says, I receive a few WhatsApp videos of this. What do I do when you see a video of abuse?
Yep.
So,
yes, we do help the victims of those who are physically abused by the caretakers and teachers. But we can only start helping them once a report is made. So if you as a public person, a citizen, you receive a WhatsApp video of this kind of abuse, your role is, if you want to be the responsible citizen, you go and make a police report about it. That is how that earlier in my presentation, I showed you that slide of that Indian man and the 12-year-old girl. That video went viral, and the reason why it went viral and why the guy was even caught and charged in court was because the citizens actually went and made reports, said that, oh, I received this viral video and I'm not happy about it because there's a small girl being forced by this man to do certain things. So as a public citizen or as anybody, if you receive a video that involves abuse or any kind of things which you feel that is not right, you can make a police report about it.
Okay, from Rita, personal question to you. What do you find is the most challenging part of your work as a victim care officer?
Okay, well, challenging part I would say is sometimes, you see, but I think it's general for all counselors lah. But over the years, with some experience, some maturity, we are able to deal with it more efficiently. But sometimes we are also humans, and we also get affected by cases which maybe are connected or in a way we can relate to it. Like sometimes if I have a child victim who is like that, a few years ago, I had a child victim who was like 3 years plus, and at that time my daughter herself was 3 years plus. So I was very much affected by it. So sometimes when you're affected by it, you may do more than what is necessary, and sometimes you may be biased towards the case. Like I was very biased in the sense that again, I was tricked by the mother of the victim, because this was a whole pure custody case. Mother, father divorced. So mother side accusing the father side of molesting the child, father side accusing the mother side of molesting the child. So I met both the mother and the father, but of course the father was staying in KL. So I did follow up with the mom because she was very like affected, traumatized. So my role again, I told you, as counselor, to be do for the family as well. So the mom used to follow up with me and tell me that she's very upset because now JKM took the child away, in the sense because JKM doesn't know suspect is on the father side or mother side. So take the child and keep under their care until they can decide who is the actual suspect, you see. So the mother was telling, oh, my poor girl, 3 years plus, never away from me. Now she's in JKM alone there, without the mother, without the father. So I was very affected. So of course I contacted JKM. I asked them, is any counselor seeing the 3-year-old child, So I did a lot of effort I put to the case. End of the day, I find out the mother actually trained or taught the child to lie in her statement. So actually, the suspect was from the mother's side. But the mother told the child, you better tell the police that the father's side did it, because if not, they'll take you away, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, so you see how I let my objectivity run because I was affected indirectly by the case, So these are the small little challenges that we face sometimes, being human as well.
Okay, considering the social media WhatsApp, but what if we do not know the location of the abuse we receive on WhatsApp? Can we still make a police report?
Yeah, you don't need to know the origin or the location or whatever. That's why the police have their own ways and resources to investigate the source, the validity, the reliability of the video. All that will be done by police. That's why they run the investigation. Your role is just to report it and then leave the investigation to the police. They will do the further follow up lah.
Okay, do you have any more questions on YouTube? Okay, this she Evelyn Pang, if you receive abuse on a WhatsApp, what is it? If is it a case abroad?
If you know from the beginning it's a case abroad, then even if you report it, nothing we can do about it lah, because this is an abroad case. But if you are not sure whether it happened abroad or in Malaysia and you report it because you're not sure, then the police will do the investigation to find out lah whether it's within Malaysia or whether it's outside of Malaysia.
Okay, we don't have any questions from YouTube. Any more questions, live statements or discussion that need to be had today? Because today is a very good opportunity to meet the person handles child victims after a report is lodged. Because we always see our seminars, our talks is only on making a report. Today we know what happens after making of the report. Any further questions? No? Okay, I'll ask Ms. Deborah to sum up her talk today. A very interesting talk, very factual and very informative.
Okay, so if I was to sum this up, I would say that these are the small ways that we can create awareness on the existence of a VCC, because uh, many times or many places that I give this talk, people are like, oh, there's such a thing as a counselor within the PDRM, or there's such a thing as victim care officer. So now that how many participants are here today? Just say there's like 100 participants. If you all share the word, if you all, like if you have family members or whoever who might need this kind of services, then at least now you know about this VCC and you can share the word around, so that little by little, more and more people are aware that these are the free counseling services that the government is providing to help in some way or another lah. The little things that we can do for our society, for our public, for the public in general. So yeah, if anybody feels that they're part of an organization or a school or anywhere that require us to come and do talks, you can contact the D11 within your state and write an official letter requesting for a talk on certain areas, topics, or whatever that's of concern lah. Other than that, I think in general, I would say that we all play a role in helping our younger generation to grow up in a safer environment from abuse, sexual abuse. So how we play a role in our family, in our community, in our church is important, so that little by little, the small steps that we take, we are helping in one way or another. So even if you know that something is going on in your neighbor's house or in your relative's house, you can do something about it. Don't feel that, oh, why should I, it's not my part of my family, or why should I bother. You can do something about it. So sometimes people are a bit like worried, okay, if I make a report, then they will come after me. There's such a thing as a talian clase. The number is 15999. So this talian clase is actually under JKM. So anybody can call this hotline at any time, and you can just, even if you just want to ask, apa saya boleh buat, saya punya jiran ni selalu jerit-jerit pukul isteri ke, you can just call and ask what to do, or if you suspect there's abuse going on in your neighbors, or you suspect there's something happening or whatever, you can just call that number, and JKM will do their own investigation. They wouldn't even come and disclose to the person that, oh, so and so call and complain, we're doing an investigation. No, they do it in their own way, but they will provide the help needed if just say there's a valid abuse going on, so at least they will take action. So we can all help in some way or another lah. So I guess I hope that everybody learned something today from this short sharing. And yeah, feel free if anytime you need to contact me for further questions, or you can contact me to ask anything. No problem.
Thank you, Ms. Deborah Priya Herman. Sum up, yes, we learned a lot about D11 today. The workings of D11 must be important. Sexual, Women's and Child Investigative Unit under the CID. So every contingent has a D11, every state and district. So then we also learned that the VCO, Victim Care Center, Victim Care Officer, 2 new names, interview room, Center for Interview, CIC. So a few things we learned today. We're thankful for Ms. Deborah. And in summing up, in overall, I like to say that in Malaysia, child protection is very well developed. We started in 1995, signing of the Convention for Human Rights against Children, Rights for Children. Then we had the law 2001 Child Act, which provided various protections for children in court. Then in 2016, amendment to the Child Act, we opened up 7 chapters on extra powers given to the protector and protection of children, more laws. 2017, Sexual Offences Against Children Act, which categorized many sexual offences against children. Then we open up with under SUAKAM, the Children's SA, Commission for Children, to protect children's rights. They had a body. And further up now, we have the CIC, the one-stop center in the hospitals. So we are very well developed. And now the NGOs are fighting for the Anti-Bullying Act, Sexual Harassment Act. So to me, in Malaysia, we are very well developed in protecting our children and protecting our women and protecting the public in sexual offences. So with that, I'd like again to thank Ms. Deborah Herman for her very fruitful and interesting informative talk, and also for the participants for sharing so many questions. We had 1 hour of discussion. We ended direct on the dot 3:45. And many questions that were very informative that I learned a lot today. And so with that, I'll pass on to Father William to give the closing statement from the Professional Standard Office. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I'm sure we want to all put our hands together virtually to thank Miss Deborah and also Chris, our moderator. Thank you. So I'd just like to also reiterate what Christopher, our moderator, said, just to say thank you to all our participants. The CCP, the Committee for Child Protection of the Archdiocese of Kuala Lumpur, this is our second talk. The third talk is coming up on the 14th of August, Saturday, same time, 2 to 4. And I'll send the posters to all of you. I'll send to Archbishop Simon Poe, who's also very much present with us from 2, despite of him having a big day today. I'll announce later why it's a big day today for him. And the talk on the 14th of August will be by Professor Noor Azia, who's the very first child commissioner in Malaysia, the very first. And she's part of SUHAKAM, like what our moderator said earlier. So she's going to give us a talk entitled Protection and Promotion of the Rights of Children. I repeat, protection and promotion of the rights of children. So please mark it in your calendar on the 14th of August, Saturday, from 2 to 4 p.m. Professor Noor Azia. Okay, so today I'd like to also record my heartfelt thanks to Ignatius from the Archdiocese Social Com for having this on YouTube. It's going live. So you can watch it for those of your friends who are unable to make it this afternoon. They can watch it on ArchKL YouTube channel. I'd like to thank Ignatius for helping us today. I'd like to also thank Tien Pereira from the Cathedral of St. John's in KL for being the back end, person to help us, to allow all of us to come in, to admit all those who have been coming in gradually. Thank you, Tien. And also I'd like to thank Alexander from Klang, who's also who's part of the back end team. So thank you so much. So before we wrap up the day, I'd like to invite Archbishop Simon Poe, who celebrates his 33rd priestly ordination anniversary. He was ordained in 1988, and today is his 33 years. Yesterday, when Archbishop texted me, he said, Jesus was crucified when he was 33, and he said he's 33 years a priest today. So, Bishop, together with Miss Deborah, our moderator, and the team of CCP, with Tian, with Ignatius, with Alexander, we want to congratulate you. We want to congratulate you. And always in Latin, we say ad multos annos, simply translated as many more years to come. Many, many. I spoke to Archbishop last week, no? I said, Bishop, after you became bishop, your hair has turned, it used to be a lot of black hair, but now a lot of gray hair already. Huh? So he said, wisdom, wisdom. I'm a very wise man now. So Bishop, you truly are. Huh? So Bishop, could you please say a prayer on your ordination day and give us your blessing? Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we pray? In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. God, of course, and by baptism, we are all your child. And precisely because of baptism, you send us forth on mission. We are the missionary disciples. We are baptized and sent. So wherever we are, I thank you, Lord, for all of us who are on this online here, because it is precisely of our baptismal calling that we are called into the society. For priests and religious, we spend most of our time in the church, but for our lay people, they are out there in society with many professions. And your court, as we hear and hear the sharing, there are so many who are out in society who can do so much more. And so we thank you for the gift of baptism, the gift of mission, for sending us forth. So I ask that your blessing may come upon all of us here, everyone who will be following this YouTube. And as you watch, may the Lord stir in your heart that yes, the mission is to make the world a better place, to bring the gospel values, mercy, and in a particular area that we're looking at, to protect all the children, for all children are gift from God. And so we ask that you may give us the grace, the strength, the wisdom, so that we can build your kingdom for the children. And I've worked so much with the young people. We say, it used to be said the young people are the leaders of the future, but Pope Francis has told us no, the young people are the now of God. They are the people who are making decisions and helping us to move forward. And in this pandemic, they are the young people who are moving the technology, the internet, the infrastructure that we need for ministry and mission. And so we ask that you may help us as we reach out for those victims in particular, for these are the marginalized, these are the ones who would be poorer, who would be in a disadvantaged position because of family situation and because of many reasons. And they are the ones that you reach out, you send us forth to them. So use us powerfully and let us be your hands and feet as Jesus look after the Lordship. May we now reach out and minister to them so that they experience again healing, mercy, and that once again they can be reconciled within themselves and feeling the healing and in terms be set free to also bless other people. So now bless all the work and bless each one of us on this day. And so with this, I ask God's blessing, implore God's blessing upon all of you as we continue to serve Him. And may the blessing of Almighty God come upon you, loved ones in your family, the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit, and remain with you forever. Amen. Thank you.
So Bishop, congratulations on behalf of all of us. Have a nice evening. Don't go out, stay safe.
Thank you. I've already been to a funeral and done a wedding this day. So anniversary or not an anniversary, it is a day to serve the Lord. And I'm happy to be here with all of you who are also giving this time to serve the Lord. and that's what we are here for. And maybe that's why I'm ordained for to minister and to serve the people wherever there is a pastoral need. So thank you for inviting Kuching. We have about 50 of us from, I think, almost 50 of us sign up from Kuching with the sisters also. Thank you very much,
Your grace.
William,
Thank you,
Chris, and Deborah for your input. Back
Ms.
to you.
Deborah, would you mind to put down your number on the chat box? Are you okay to share it with us?
Sure, sure.
Then for those of you who had asked earlier some questions, as to how do you get in touch with a counseling officer in IPK, so perhaps like Deborah can be our mediator. So once again, thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a nice evening and enjoy the weekend. Thank you so much. Once again, thank you, Ms. Deborah, Mr. Chris, Archbishop. Congratulations once again. And thank you to all. Okay. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.